Chapter 7. The electric clock on the nightstand buzzed sharply at 7 o'clock, shattering the silence and yanking Andrew from a heavy, dreamless sleep. His pulse hammered in his ears as he jolted upright, disoriented, his hand instinctively knocking the device onto the floor. The harsh, repetitive beeping drilled into his skull, an unwelcome assault on his exhausted senses. His heart pounded in his chest, the abrupt awakening jarring every nerve in his body. He gasped in a breath, trying to shake off the disorientation as his sluggish limbs struggled to respond. A dull ache settled in his temples and he groaned. He hated alarms, never used them. But after 3 consecutive nights of restless, fractured sleep, exhaustion had won the battle. He had grudgingly set the alarm before collapsing into bed, knowing that without it he would risk oversleeping, missing whatever small window of opportunity the morning might provide. Dragging himself up, he retrieved the clock from where it had landed, still screeching on the hardwood floor. The shrill sound grated against his nerves, and he shut it off with a sharp press of his thumb. He tossed it onto the bed and ran a hand through his dishevelled hair, exhaling slowly. His body resisted the idea of movement, sluggish and unwilling, but he forced himself to his feet, stretching stiff muscles before heading straight for the bathroom. If he lingered under the covers for even a second longer, he knew he'd succumb to the temptation of sleep again. The cold shower did its job, shocking him into full wakefulness as the icy water sluiced down his skin, driving away the last remnants of grogginess. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the chill bite through him, a much-needed jolt to push his body into motion. By the time he was dressed, he felt marginally better. A full night's sleep had done wonders, and he no longer felt the living dead. Breakfast wasn't a priority. He'd grab something at the department instead. Maybe now, with their new help, they'd finally get somewhere with the case. As he pulled into the station parking lot, he glanced at his watch. 7:40. He was early. Matthew and Shara probably weren't in yet, which gave him time to review the report she had brought. He had taken it home the night before, intending to go through it, but exhaustion had overtaken him. The moment his head hit the pillow, he had been out cold. Taking the stairs 2 at a time, he practically ran to the office. The department was quiet, the shift change was still in progress, and the day crew hadn't fully arrived yet. Pushing the door open, he froze. Shara was already there. Seated comfortably in the chair next to his desk, she was flipping through one of his case files, as if she had all the time in the world. Her back was to him, but he knew she had heard him. Still, she didn't move, didn't acknowledge his presence immediately. "I see I'm not the only one eager to work today," he said, stepping inside and shutting the door behind him. "The sooner we solve this, the sooner I can leave," she replied flatly, eyes fixed on the pages in front of her. Andrew noticed that she was reading one of his reports, her fingers idly tapping against the paper as if sifting through thoughts as she read. "I didn't get the chance to go through the report you brought yet," he admitted, pulling out his chair and sitting down. Shara didn't respond. "I see you're busy, so I assume you won't mind if I take a look now?" he asked, picking up the file she had brought. She didn't object, so he opened it and started reading. Disappointingly, it contained nothing new. The 2 kidnappings mirrored their cases exactly, victims taken from their homes without any sign of forced entry. The doors had remained locked, the interiors left in shambles. No prints, no leads, no fresh insights. Still, he didn't set the report down right away. Instead, he kept it open, using it as an excuse to watch her. She was completely absorbed in reading, her expression unreadable. But she had let her guard slip just a little. Her lips had parted slightly, just enough to reveal gleaming, unnaturally sharp canines. That unsettling, unfamiliar sensation he had felt yesterday upon meeting her returned. A cold detachment, an otherness that he couldn't place. And yet, somehow it felt oddly familiar, as if... "It's called wolf syndrome," Shara said suddenly, breaking the silence. Andrew blinked. "What?" "A hereditary condition that causes the canines to grow longer and sharper than usual," she clarified, still not looking up. Before he could press further, the door swung open. "Good morning," Matthew greeted, striding in with his usual energy. "Sorry I'm late." "You're not. We got here early," Andrew muttered. "So, what's the plan?" Shara asked, tossing the report onto the desk and turning to them. Though she addressed both of them, her gaze lingered on Andrew. He didn't answer, still watching her intently. Shara's lips curled into the faintest, almost imperceptible smile, an amused flicker, as if she found Andrew's scrutiny entertaining rather than concerning, before lazily shifting her attention to Matthew, who had already lit a cigarette and was absorbed in it. Andrew got up and stared out the window. The morning had started clear, but now dark clouds loomed on the horizon. Rain was coming. "I want to see the victims' homes," Shara broke the silence, shifting her gaze from Andrew. "The first two have already been cleared and handed back to the property owners," Matthew said, stubbing out his cigarette. "But the most recent one is still under investigation. The abduction happened just the other night." "Perfect." Shara stood. For a moment she hesitated before heading for the door. Andrew remained at the window, lost in thought. "Andrew, you good?" Matthew asked, stepping closer. "Yeah, let's go." He turned abruptly and left without waiting for him. Matthew exhaled, shaking his head. "This is going to be a fun day." By the time they reached the parking lot, Shara was already waiting by Andrew's car, her posture eerily still, as if she had been standing there for hours. The wind tugged at the edges of her coat, but she remained unmoved, her sunglasses concealing whatever thoughts might be running through her mind. Even in the dim morning light, there was something about her presence that felt off, like a shadow that didn't quite belong in the waking world. They weren't there yet when he heard her phone ring. The sharp chime cut through the quiet tension hanging in the air. Shara answered, her voice dropping into a hushed tone as she turned her back to them. The moment stretched, her posture rigid, as though shielding the conversation from their ears. Andrew watched her closely, his instincts prickling. Then, like a spectre emerging from the fog of memory, the image of that black figure at the window resurfaced in his mind, silent, motionless, disappearing into the night. It haunted him, refusing to fade. This was the second time he had been gripped by the same unsettling sensation since meeting her, and this time he wasn't going to push it aside. He didn't understand why, but deep down, he knew. Shara Black wasn't who she claimed to be. Why had she been sent instead of the detective who had originally handled the case? She was too young to have been involved back then. 10 years ago, she had probably been just a teenager, still dreaming of becoming a cop, of cleaning up the streets and making a difference. And yet here she was stepping into an old case. Why? The absence of the original investigator gnawed at him. That detective had been there, had seen everything firsthand. Reports captured facts, but experience wove the story together. It was the small, seemingly irrelevant details that often cracked a case open. Andrew's thoughts churned as they reached the car. Shara ended her call and slipped her phone into her pocket, her expression unreadable. "Problems?" Matthew asked, his tone light but his eyes sharp, watching her closely. "Nothing I can't handle," she replied smoothly, climbing into the passenger seat with practiced ease. Matthew hesitated for just a moment before getting into the back seat. His usual spot had been taken, and he didn't like the shift in positioning. Andrew got in last, his expression troubled, perhaps even angry. His jaw was tight, his grip on the wheel firm, his silence heavier than usual. The engine roared to life and the car merged into traffic. The city blurred past in streaks of neon and headlights, a chaotic dance of motion and colour. Yet, inside the vehicle, an eerie quiet settled over them, pressing down like a suffocating weight. Shara's gaze flickered to the rear-view mirror. Matthew was staring absently out the window, lost in thought as buildings and storefronts swept past. He was an obstacle, but one she could handle. Her focus shifted forward. If she wanted to distract them, she had to take one of them out of the equation. She was certain now. Craven was hiding something. And then there was Sakura's involvement. His assignment to this case wasn't some bureaucratic coincidence. It was intentional. Everything was intentional. And then there was Andrew. Something about him unsettled her. He wasn't like the others. He had an air of displacement, as if he existed on the fringes of his own reality, never fully grounded. He didn't fit into the mold of ordinary people. There was something in his gaze, something just beneath the surface, that made her watch him more closely than she meant to. And there was another layer to it, too, a flicker of familiarity that made her stomach twist. It had shocked her yesterday, that first moment she laid eyes on him, as if she had seen him somewhere before in a place she couldn't quite remember. She wasn't sure why she kept gravitating toward him, why she kept taking note of the small things, how his shoulders tensed when he was deep in thought, how his fingers tapped against the wheel in a steady, almost rhythmic pattern. The way he looked at her made her feel even more exposed, as if he could see past the mask she wore, past the carefully constructed persona she showed to everyone else. It was an unsettling feeling, one she tried to ignore but couldn't quite shake. He was just a human after all. There was no reason for her interest. Yet, it lingered. If she had to remove one of them, it wouldn't be Andrew. "Why were you sent?" The question came from Andrew, his voice cutting through the thick silence with a sharp edge of suspicion. It was direct. Too direct. Shira forced herself to remain still, to keep her expression carefully neutral. "What do you mean? Why wasn't the original detective sent?" His voice was sharper now, pressing for an answer. "Why you?" She had expected this question. Ever since she saw Gabby note that the case was 10 years old, she had known it would come. She had prepared for it. "Didn't Mr. Bowden tell you?" Her tone was steady, measured. "He died shortly after closing the case. There were suspicions that the kidnappers killed him for refusing to back off. He wasn't the type to let things go." A flicker of something passed over Andrew's face. It was subtle, but she caught it, the way his grip on the steering wheel tightened, how the muscles in his jaw flexed. "You knew him?" His voice low, contained. Shara turned slightly toward him, studying his face. He was gripping the wheel so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. He was trying to keep his emotions in check, but she could see the cracks in his composure. She had to be careful. Andrew was growing suspicious. If she wasn't careful, he would start watching her more closely, start noticing things she didn't want him to see. And if that happened, then Matthew would follow suit. If she wanted to move without interference, she had to remove him from the equation. Matthew, not Andrew. She wanted to keep an eye on Andrew for a little longer. Her expression remained unreadable, her mind already working on how to do just that.